You stare at your phone screen, watching the minutes tick away, desperately trying to fall asleep. You toss and turn, feeling the heavy pressure of tomorrow's endless schedule hanging over your head. But for 99% of human history, this late-night anxiety didn't exist at all. For nearly 300,000 years, our ancestors never had a single job to go to, a boss to answer to, or an alarm clock to wake them up. They lived in a wild, wide-open world surrounded by complete darkness at night and unpredictable dangers by day. Survival was raw, and the modern comforts we take for granted simply weren't there. So how did they actually spend their time if they weren't working to survive? The real answer hides a deep forgotten secret about our past, and it will completely change how we look at human evolution, modern health, and the true meaning of being alive. Let us dig up the clues buried beneath our feet to find out. The truth began to surface in 1963 when an archaeologist named Richard Lee stepped into the Kalahari Desert of Botswana. He went there to study the Jew/Hwansi people, one of the last remaining groups of humans who still live the exact same way our ancestors did for hundreds of thousands of years. Conventional wisdom at the time said that primitive life was a non-stop, brutal struggle for survival. Experts assumed these people spent every waking second hunting for food just to stay alive. But when Richard Lee sat down with his notebook and actually timed their daily routines, he was stunned. The numbers simply did not lie. He discovered that a normal adult only spent about 2 to 3 days a week looking for food. When you add up the hours, it came out to roughly 17 hours a week. That is less than half of a standard modern work week. The rest of their time belonged entirely to them. They did not have bills to pay, meetings to attend, or emails to answer. They just lived. This was not a lucky fluke either. Anthropologists immediately started looking at other isolated groups across the globe to see if this pattern held up. They tracked the Hadza people in the dry lands of Tanzania. They studied the Aishia in the thick rainforests of Paraguay. They went to the scorching deserts of Australia to observe the Martu people. These groups lived on completely different continents, cut off from each other, facing totally different environments. Yet, the data came back exactly the same. Across the board, humans living in their natural state only needed about 15 to 20 hours a week to secure everything necessary for survival. It is easy to look at these modern groups and wonder if they are just an exception to the rule. We naturally ask ourselves if the truly ancient humans, the ones living ice ages ago, had it much harder. To find that answer, we have to look directly at human bones. When researchers dug up and compared the skeletons of ancient hunter-gatherers with the skeletons of early farmers who lived thousands of years later, they found something deeply unsettling. The ancient hunter-gatherers were actually much healthier. Their bones showed they were taller, their frames were thicker, and their teeth had almost no cavities because they ate a rich, varied diet of wild plants and clean meat. But the early farmers told a tragic story. Their skeletons were shorter. Their bones bore the permanent marks of severe nutritional gaps. Their teeth were rotting away from eating grain all day, and their spines were twisted with early arthritis from hours of repetitive daily labor. They worked harder, suffered more sickness, and died at a much younger age. The dust and the bones make it clear that human history did not start with endless toil. It started with leisure. If survival was such a terrifying full-time struggle, humans never would have had the energy to create things that had no practical use. Yet our past is filled with beautiful mysteries. In 1994, 3 cave explorers walked into Chauvet Cave in southern France and shone their flashlights on the walls. What they found blew the scientific world away. Hundreds of paintings created over 30,000 years ago covered the stone. There were sweeping images of horses, lions, and rhinos, drawn with incredible shading depth and a sense of raw movement. These were not messy scratches made by desperate, starving people. This was master-level art. It took planning, deep focus, and days of dedicated time away from the hunt. Someone stood in the dark, breathing in the smoke of a torch, just to leave something beautiful behind. We see this same deep human need all over the world. In Blombos Cave, located in South Africa, archaeologists discovered tiny delicate shell beads that are 100,000 years old. Someone had carefully drilled perfect holes through each shell to make a necklace. The craziest part is that the nearest ocean was 20 kilometers away. That means someone walked a 40-kilometer round trip through dangerous wild territory just to pick up pretty shells, then spent hours working with sharp stones just to make jewelry. Then in 2008, scientists in Germany dug up a 40,000-year-old flute carved from the hollow bone of a vulture. It had 5 perfectly placed finger holes. This instrument was crafted by someone who truly understood melody pitch and performance. They did not build it to hunt or to fight. They built it to fill the silence of the night with music. These ancient objects prove that when humans had free time, we did not look for ways to be more productive. We looked for ways to create meaning. When you piece all these clues together, you can finally see what a normal day actually looked like for 99% of our history. You would wake up naturally as the sun cracked over the horizon. There was no rush. You would sit by the glowing embers of last night's fire, eating a handful of berries or some leftover fish from the day before. Morning was a deeply social time. Everyone sat together, gossiped, laughed, and talked about nothing in particular. If the camp still had food from a successful hunt a few days ago, nobody left. You stayed home. You might spend a quiet afternoon sharpening the tip of a wooden spear, weaving a reed basket, or softening an animal's skin to make a blanket. You did these tasks at your own pace with no boss watching over your shoulder. You did them because you took pride in your skills and because helping your tribe was what made you human. When hunting did happen, it was not a wild, chaotic run. Humans are persistence hunters. Because we can sweat, we have the unique ability to cool our bodies down while moving. Most furry animals cannot do this. So a small group of hunters would simply track an animal at a steady, gentle jog for hours, slowly pushing it until the animal overheated and grew too tired to run. The hunt was long, quiet, and required intense cooperation. By early afternoon, the meat was brought back, shared equally with everyone, and the work for the day was completely finished. The rest of the day belonged to pure connection. Adults would rest in the shade, play with children, and groom each other to strengthen their social ties. James Sussman noted that these people spent up to 6 hours a day just enjoying each other's company. In a world without police banks or written laws, your relationships were your only safety net. If you were selfish, people would not share food with you. So humans invested heavily in love, friendship, and trust. When darkness fell, the real magic happened. In 2014, researcher Polly Weissner analyzed long recordings of campfire conversations. She discovered that daytime talk was always practical, mostly about food or complaints. But at night, 81% of the conversation turned into storytelling. Around the fire, humans shared ancient myths, played music, cracked jokes, and wondered about the stars. This safe, quiet space is exactly where human culture, religion, and philosophy were born. After that, people would sleep in 2 separate blocks, waking up for an hour in the middle of the night to reflect in the dark, perfectly content with just existing. So how did we lose this paradise of open time and end up trapped in the exhausting grind of the modern world? The answer lies in a massive turning point about 10,000 years ago in a region called the Fertile Crescent. This was the moment humans stopped wandering and started planting seeds. We call it the birth of agriculture, and we usually celebrate it as our greatest achievement. We are taught that farming gave us control over nature, brought security, and freed us from the harsh life of the wild. But history hides a dark irony. Agriculture was not a grand step forward. It was a brilliantly disguised trap. Think about what actually happened. When we began clearing land to grow crops, we suddenly created a way to feed more mouths than ever before. But more food led to more babies, and larger populations meant we instantly needed even more crops. Within just a few generations, our numbers exploded so fast that there was no turning back. We could no longer return to the old ways of hunting and gathering because there were simply too many people to feed. We were completely locked into the system. Worse yet, this new lifestyle demanded a brutal amount of nonstop physical labor. Instead of walking through the woods for a few hours, humans now had to spend their entire lives plowing soil, pulling weeds, digging canals, and guarding fields from dawn until dusk. The ancient freedom vanished, replaced by an endless cycle of heavy toil. As these farming communities grew into crowded towns and massive cities, a radical new hierarchy took over. We needed specialists to build walls, soldiers to protect the grain, and administrators to manage the wealth. For the first time in human history, the concept of a job was born. Your time no longer belonged to you. You had to give away your precious hours to someone else, working under their rules just to earn the basic resources to survive. Now, as you sit here listening to this, you might finally understand why you feel so exhausted at the end of every day. We often blame ourselves for our burnout, our midnight anxiety, and our constant feeling of emptiness. We feel like failures if we cannot keep up with the fast pace of modern society. But the truth is, you are not broken. Your body and your mind are just running a very old survival system that was never meant for a crowded world of cubicles, strict schedules, and digital screens. For nearly 300,000 years, your ancestors woke up every single morning already free, already enough, and completely at peace. They did not spend their lives trying to build a career or prove their worth to a boss. They were already living the exact peaceful life that we spend our entire existence working to retire into. You deserve to breathe to rest and to just exist without needing to justify your time through constant productivity. If this journey into our shared past brought some comfort to your heart today, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. Let us keep sharing these deep conversations together and find our way back to who we really are. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next video.